joined now by Ric Grenell, who's our Senior Advisor for Foreign Policy and National Security, to give a little different take on Zelenskyy, the funding to Ukraine. There's also an additional $40 billion that's in this omnibus that could be going to Ukraine on top of the $1.85 that was announced by President Biden yesterday. We saw this historic address last night. I know that can pull at the heartstrings of people, even if they have been questioning kind of where is this war going. So, Rick, I just want to go to you first on your reaction to yesterday's events, both Zelenskyy at the White House and then Zelenskyy addressing members of Congress.
Look, I think watching the war in Ukraine, everyone is extremely concerned. Your heart breaks. But the question is, what do we do now? Did Europe step up and do something? This is Europe's neighborhood. That's the key here. And we also have given billions of dollars, and we need to make sure that money has been well spent already. I am actually very concerned that we don't know where the money has been spent, and we're already talking about giving additional billions of dollars. And this is, something that Congress is used to. They just keep writing checks without knowing exactly if the money has been spent very well. And that's the biggest concern for me. There's no question that this is a war that Putin has hurled on the Ukrainian people. We definitely want to help, but I think that we have been helping and pushing the Europeans aside, and the Europeans haven't been helping enough. Once again, we're training the Europeans to just sit back while the Americans rush in too fast.
Yeah, it's interesting, Rick, because I've had a pretty significant amount of experience dealing with Ukraine. It was subject of legal action that I was involved in previously, as everybody knows. So I obviously studied the issue significantly, and Ukraine's had a lot of issues on corruption. I mean, a tremendous amount of problems there. Hopefully that's being resolved, and I think Zelensky's trying to do that. I do feel bad for the people of Ukraine because this war was brought to them. But I don't understand why the Europeans – well, I mean, I do understand because they think they've got somebody in the White House that's going to let them do this without spending money. But this affects the European – it's getting cold everywhere in the world right now because winter is upon us. The Europeans, it's in their backyard, like you said. It affects their energy, which affects their heating capability. It affects their petroleum, and it affects their breadbasket because Ukraine's a huge producer of wheat. So here's the question. With all of that being said, your theory is the Ukrainians are in a terrible conflict, and the Europeans are saying the Americans will fix it.
Yeah, we keep training them to do that. Remember, I was U.S. ambassador to Germany. Germany has the largest economy in Europe. Germany has a budget surplus. Germany is not spending enough on NATO spending. They're not meeting their obligations. And all we heard from Chancellor Merkel for 15 years was that it was of paramount importance that European borders not be rewritten. She put everything into this mandate that when European borders are rewritten, Europe must respond. Well, the European borders in Ukraine have been rewritten twice by the Russians, and this is a sole responsibility of the Europeans to respond to that. Now, when Russia comes in, of course, America is the number one funder of NATO. NATO exists to blunt the offense of Russia. We know that, and it's very important that we contribute. But this is a European-first problem. The Europeans should be out front, and they are not. But again, Jay, we keep teaching the Europeans to sit back because we rush in. I'll finish with this. I'm really concerned that the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, has no plan. He's acting like the Secretary of Defense, and our entire government is only talking about defense issues and military issues. Where is the peaceful diplomatic strategy? I don't see it.
Yeah, and Rick, that's another part that I think a lot of Americans get concerned about. It's not that they don't want to help. It's that they want to be helping in the best way possible, see it into the conflict so that the kids stop being killed, the women and children, and soldiers as well in Ukraine, so that this conflict in Europe comes to an end. But then we get some pretty intense threats from the Russians, specifically relating to the Patriot missile system, saying, this escalates it to where we now see you, and we were already funding most of the war already for Ukraine, but now we see you as an active partner, like you're on the battlefield once you install that Patriot missile system and it's in use. And that scares the American people. And what I asked you as a former acting director of national intelligence, should it scare us the way that it scares me? And not just since Russia's going to send a nuclear weapon to the U.S., but that they could attack our electrical grids, the ability of just what they could do to injure us that's non-military.
Look, I'm a diplomat, and I'm always pushing to have really tough diplomats at the negotiating table. If you want to avoid war, you've got to have really tough diplomats. We've seen the left, the Democrats, mock tough diplomacy for way too long. I am concerned about a Russia that's on the offense, but the United States government at whole can absolutely combat that. We should not be worried about the United States government response. But within the U.S. government, there's an arm of the military through the Department of Defense, and there is a arm of diplomacy through the State Department. The State Department is what I'm concerned with because they're completely MIA. We have to have tough diplomacy, and we cannot always just be rushing into war. This Biden administration constantly only has one option, and it's a military option, and it's a very scary one that they constantly keep using.
You know, Rick, I appreciate your insight on this. And one of the things we do with the ACLJ, and Rick, you know this, you've been now involved with us for a while, is that we understand the nuance of all this, the nuance of diplomacy, the nuance of peace through strength, but you got to be strong, but you've got to also have diplomatic channels. And I think it gives the ACLJ a bit of a unique role in this space, because we people like Ric Grenell and others, and our team has had a lot of governmental experience, as everybody knows, over the last 7 years, and even before that. So, Rick, we really do come at the ACLJ with a kind of a unique perspective and also an action plan, so we're not just talking about it.
Look, one of the reasons I joined the ACLJ is because I'm somebody who likes action, not just talk. And I've been on the other side. I've been in government watching the ACLJ actually take action, action that affects policy and decisions. I mean, I'm thinking of the Pastor Brunson issue alone. But what I would say to people is we're all frustrated. Conservatives are incredibly frustrated. If you want to support an organization that is not just talk, that is actually filled with lawyers who take action and who stop the bad policies coming out of the Biden administration, I would just say, please support ACLJ. It's a great organization. They're not wildly spending money. I'm really proud of what we do and the work that we do, and it really makes a difference, and that's why I'm a part of it.
It does. Rick, we appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you and your family.